Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for July 15, 2019. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Griffin.
Here.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott. Mayor Hopewell.
Present. May we have a motion to excuse the Vice Mayor?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. I ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're on item C, the adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, anyone in the audience wanting to speak on items under F? That's the consent agenda, which there's only one item. If you want to speak on that item will need to be moved to the regular agenda. If you have such an item, just indicate at this time. You don't need to come forward. Okay, thank you. We'll move it to the regular. Thank you. Yeah, right. It's been moved to the regular. We're not at regular yet. So we move the item to the regular agenda. So let me just state it one more time. Under F, under the consent agenda, if you want to speak on that item, it will need to be moved to the regular agenda. The regular agenda allows for comments on all items on the regular agenda. So anyone want to move the item under the consent agenda? Thank you. Mr. Manager, communications?
Nothing, Your Honor.
The consent agenda, please.
We have approval of a contract with Andy Egan Company for chiller upgrade at the Stockbridge facility in the amount of $109,235.
Thank you, Commissioners. Requested actions, a motion to approve this item and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Moved by Commissioner Urban.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Anderson. Roll call.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, the regular agenda, please.
Item G1, adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 20B addressing commercial medical marijuana facilities so as to reflect recent changes in state law and regulatory rules governing those facilities and extend the term of provisional certificates issued by the city.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Anyone wanting to just comment on G1? G1, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Good evening, Jevin Weinberg. I live in Portage, Michigan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. As far as the G1 on the agenda, most of it is pretty good and just aligning with state law, but the second to last paragraph is nothing to do with state law. It pertains to the licensing process in the state of Michigan, or in the city of Kalamazoo, and that's where we have an issue here. The proposed amendment to Chapter 20B would extend the life of the provisional certificate issued in 2018 for additional year, provided that the holder can demonstrate before 1 year expiration that 1, it has sought licensure pre-qualification from the state. We not only have pre-qualification, we have a full licensure in the city of Portage, so any licenses beyond that, we're close to our processor license in the city of Kalamazoo, and we hope to be close to the grow license here, but we're going to get kicked out if this amendment passes today. The second item on here, or the second prerequisite, is that it has obtained local site plan approval from the city of Kalamazoo Planning and Economic Development Department. We have not obtained local site plan approval at our grow, which is at 2927 Mill Cork in the industrial park off of Cork Street. We have our pre-site plan approval meeting on Wednesday. We absolutely plan on moving forward and getting a license there, and we should be a few months away from it, providing we can get that site plan approval from the city of Kalamazoo soon. Excuse me, I'm part of an ownership of the Lake Effect ownership group, and there is no property that we have that is more important than this grow property. Me personally speaking, I grew up in Lincolnshire Apartments. right down the road from this property. My mom raised me as a single mom, me and my brother. She walked to work a lot of times in that industrial park, working at Fabric Hill, whether rain, snow, or shine, it didn't matter, to put food on the table for me and my brother when she had a broken down car or whatever. She worked there for 18 years. I lived in Lincolnshire for 18 years. How much do you think it means to me to be able to go back to that industrial park where I watched my mom slave away 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, working in at that plastics company to put food on the table for me and my brother? I can go back there and own a business in that industrial park and affect people's lives, give them the opportunities that my mom never had. Now, let me tell you, nothing is more important than this. Please do not vote this amendment in. A slight change, and we've been trying to contact the city attorney's office about this for well over a week now to get a slight change in this made. People that are going through the process of site plan approval with the city of Kalamazoo should not be kicked out, and that's what this amendment does. And, you know, the community resources consulted, none. The proposed changes are merely reflective of recent changes in state law. There's nothing to do with the change in state law for stopping somebody from getting site plan approval for a location. Now, I'm sorry that we haven't done it in this amount of time that we have, but we obviously need to get our store and portage fully licensed. We also had a huge water main break at that building, which caused a huge construction project in the fall. We had to build a 20-foot hole to go down there and repair a 3-inch main line. Then we had another pipe blow in February because of the negative 40-degree weather that we had that flooded the building, and we had to do about another $150,000 in repairs. The building is completely paid off. We've already done extensive improvements to the inside and outside of the building, masonry work, electrical work, gas line work, all kinds of improvements, and there's not a lot of buildings in that industrial park that are being improved upon right now. I can tell you that it needs it over there. So we're doing everything right that we possibly can. Sorry we're a little slow on the timeline, but please do not kick us out and stop us from continuing this process by voting in this amendment. A slight change can be made in the language to this amendment that allows us to continue on in the process and get our license there. And speaking from the industry in general, there is no more important license than the grow license. Nothing functions without the grow licenses. We need that grow license, and we intend on pushing for it wholeheartedly as we have been. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to comment on this item? Good evening.
What's up, guys? Chris Wimhoff, 1407 Bryant Street. I was at the meeting before when we talked about this for Kalamazoo, and all of our zoning and things were set up great as they are. That was one of the things that I took away from the meeting that most of you were at, was that the zoning was okay as is. That's one of the best things about Kalamazoo. This amendment, from what I understand, and I haven't had time to research it, but from what he's saying, if you're putting this in the city inspector's hands, then you're cutting out half of your group. It's not been a secret, and it's something I've advocated and a lot of other people have mentioned, and there's a billion articles to go along with, that there are a lot of problems with the zoning in this city for local people. Why are you guys putting a local amendment for a city step in a state that's made this a hard enough issue already? The city, on the city level, and I again, you guys attended the meeting. At the city level, we're set. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to put any more local stuff into this. And if you do, as somebody that has tried to do an organization and tried to help for the last 3 years, your zoning will not allow equal opportunity. And I'll say that frankly again, your zoning will not allow equal opportunity. If there's an amendment for this to go to city zoning, it needs to be struck out. I don't care what it is. If you're putting the city inspectors in charge of this, it needs to be struck out. There is no more to say about that. It needs to be struck out. It needs to be struck out. The state's made it hard enough. You guys don't need to help. Take it out.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Devin Loker. The extension process that we've unveiled in the ordinance, it's different as it applies to growers versus provisional centers with a lottery system. So for growers, these things, extensions should be granted. If you want to put some hoops for them to jump through, if we could just request that the site plan process be started or a site plan submitted, then it doesn't put it on the city to have approved it or any other meetings thereafter. They would be able to get through to the next year, finish the plans. It's been a dismal year over the last year for state licensing, all the hoop jumping. It didn't happen quite as quick as we all anticipated, so we'd like a little buffer there. They're not alone. There's several on the docket that are going through the process and could use a little more time to just get built and fully approved. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Alex Leonowitz. I'm the COO and General Counsel for Redbud Roots. They're a company that received a provisional center license during the lottery system. Let me start. I completely understand where the city is coming from with all of this. You've been given a license. You want to see those licenses developed. You're getting a lot of contact from folks eager to come into Kalamazoo. So I completely respect where the city's coming from and why they're doing it. The tricky part with it is a couple of things, and I think what you're seeing is a couple of groups getting stuck in this weird position. The first thing is that you read the first ordinance July 1st, and we were right there, the process to submit for site plan approval. However, even if you submitted July 1st, because of the scheduling and the way the city has a lot on its docket, I respect that, you can't get through site approval until at the earliest August 24th. So you read something on July 1st, which you really can't get through in the month of July, until, so it makes it's a weird spot for those. What some of the other folks I think are saying is a couple of things. The state licensure process, and we submitted in February, we didn't get licensed till December. So I submitted for pre-qual, we submitted for pre-qual, before we even applied with the city of Kalamazoo, and we were one of the first to get it in December. Then we had an issue with the city property, which we attempted to purchase. It took 4 months. It should have only taken 2. Then we tried to combine the parcels. That took longer than it should. And then by the time we get to the site plan approval, because you got to pick how you're going to build this thing out, I got an architect with us that says he needs 3 weeks. So you can see how quickly you get to that year-end mark, and it's really not due to a lot of the parties just sitting on it. What I propose, and what I would just hope that everybody has an open mind to, is to say, you can actually solve this, and I think one of the gentlemen said it, is to say, listen, before the end of July 31st, you have to at least submit for that initial site plan approval. If you do that, right, and say it goes to August and gives a little bit more lax for the city to go maybe early September, so you're giving a 30-day window, which allows those people to get through, doesn't cut anybody off at the knees before they get the chance, and it kind of saves this last-ditch effort for these companies that may have been faced with some adversity along the way. So I think it's a really simple solution. I think it works for both sides. I think it presents well. Obviously, it's not in my hands, it's in yours, but as the business owner, as one of those folks that it's a privilege to receive licensure from the city to operate. We look forward to it. I hope that the city can understand where companies are kind of coming from in the process, and just maybe that small amendment would allow those to finish that process. And if you can't get it done with this last site plan approval, you probably don't deserve to be here, but at least give us the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to comment on this item? Seeing no one, Mr. Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to give the commission some background, given what some of the speakers have said, and offer a solution to the issue. First off, a year ago, the city issued 18 provisional licenses. They were broken out roughly to 10 were provisioning centers, 1 pure grow operation, 1 pure processing operation, and 6 grow processing operations. So that's a total of 18. Out of those 18 people who got provisional certificates, 11 of them, I'm sorry, I take that back, 13 of them have gotten site plan approval. And I want to point out, this is not a zoning issue. Site plan approval is required for any business who are going in and building a new building, or they're reconstructing or rehabbing an old building to do something different. So site plan approval is nothing that is unique to these businesses. All businesses in the city of Kalamazoo have to go through this process. And about 6 months ago, the process was both in terms streamlined and also made a little more extensive in terms of a pre-qualification. As I understand it from CP&D folks, the issue was people would come with a site plan and then there was problems with, well, you didn't think about this, you didn't think about this, and so the plan of getting approval was much delayed. Now there is a pre-site plan process where there's a meeting with staff, with the developer, and then they go through a pre-meeting process, and then the formal process of submitting the plan that is, again, vetted. And there still may be some glitches that are developed, but the approval process, much in line with our development-ready community certification from the state, is aimed at moving that process along, and so that we can move projects through the time frame quicker. So I want to underscore that. Now, again, 13 of those licensees got their approval from site plan. They also need to get pre-qualified, at least as a minimum, from the state. So now we're talking about 5 that in that year period didn't seem to be able, for one reason or another, be able to get either pre-qualified and or get their site plan approval. Of those 5, it appears that 1 has not submitted any plan. 1 has been given, the site was pursuant to the Natural Features Protection Ordinance, so they had a 6-month delay. They couldn't do anything, and so we've recognized that in the ordinance. And then the last 3 are people who are coming in at the 11th hour who filed their application just within the last few weeks, expecting it to get done by the end of July. Now, I assume that all of them have one reason or another why they couldn't get it done in the previous 11 months. But what, and speaking with Bobby Durkee this afternoon, he says, and we spoke about this because it was, you had to have your plan approved by the end of this month. Otherwise, you were out of luck. You would lose your provisional certificate. And speaking with Mr. Durkee, he indicated that he doesn't necessarily have to go with that hard deadline. So what is being, and I passed out before all of you, is a proposal that would change the conditions. And the conditions are you still have to have pre-qualification status, and based upon the information I received late this afternoon from Clerk Borling, all of the applicants have either one of 2 conditions. Either they've pre-qualified or their pre-qualification is being appealed. And so they haven't been finally denied. And so as long as you're either pre-qualified or your application for pre-qualification is on appeal, you're eligible to get your provisional certificate extended. So that's condition 1. Then 2 other conditions have to occur. The first is your site was subject to the moratorium, and that was in the original proposal. So that remains. Then, instead of being approved by the end of this month, as long as the application for approval has been filed with the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on or before today's date, before July 15th. So if you got it in before today, then you will be you can continue through the site plan approval process, even though final approval may occur after July 31st. So that's what's being proposed as an amendment, and I would ask that the commissioner move to amend the proposed ordinance to include the language that I've passed out to you.
Commissioner Anderson?
Would you mind reading it?
Sure. I mean, it is the whole thing, or just
The portions
change?
that you're
Just the
particularly
portion?
focusing on.
Sure. Let me start the sentence. Well, I'll start here. A provisional certificate issued by the city will expire and be void after 1 year if state approval is not diligently pursued to completion by the applicant or on the date that the state approval is denied by final order to the applicant, whichever first occurs. Provided, however, due to the deliberateness of the state in issuing operating licenses, provisional certificates issued by the city clerk prior to January 1st, 2019 will be extended for a period of 1 year if on the date the provisional certificate would otherwise expire, and they were issued over several periods. We had most of them issued at the end of July, a couple of them in early August, and one as late as December. If on the date the provisional certificate would otherwise expire, the holder of the provisional certificate has been issued a notice of pre-qualification status by the department, that is LARA, the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, or a denial of pre-qualification status by the department is under appeal, and either, 1, an application for approval of the site plan for the proposed facility has been filed with the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on or before July 15th, 2019, or the site of the proposed facility for which the provisional certificate was issued was subject to a city-imposed moratorium on development from December 3rd, 2018 to June 3rd, 2019.
Commissioner Urban?
Well, I'm ready to move that amendment, if that will prompt a discussion.
Let for more questions
Yeah.
before we do that.
Okay.
So I would, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have all the eligible applicants, all the people that have a chance to get it, have they all filed for site approval?
All but one.
So then my question would be, what do we lose if we say instead of July 15th, July 31st? What do we lose if we say that?
Well, I would think that they're 2 weeks to losing their provisional certificate. If they would have done it, they should have done it by now. And certainly, the city, the city commission, when it introduced this ordinance on July 1st, certainly put people on notice. And in fact, at least one, and there may have been more than one, I don't know, because I didn't hear from CP&D, they filed July 2nd. So they were people who are curious about that and knew that year was coming up, made repeated inquiries to the clerk's office, to community planning and economic development staff as to what's going on. Now, if you want to push it to July 31st, that's your call, but I think that saying today's the date, you should have had it in by now, is more than reasonable.
I would favor July 31st. That's me.
We're in question mode. Any other questions for the attorney? Commissioner Anderson?
In your opinion, do these modifications address the concerns that were expressed by people who came and spoke about this?
I think that they do. And I would say if you're going to push it off because the first certificates were issued on July 30th of last year, I would suggest you make that application July 30th of this year, not the 31st, because technically the provisional certificate would have expired,
That's fine.
if that's what the commission wants to do.
Other questions for the attorney? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve this amendment with the change that the date be moved to July 30th. It seems like another 15 days isn't going to kill anybody.
There's a
All right.
motion.
All right, there you go.
Is there support?
A second.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. And is there discussion? Commissioner?
I'm sorry, my question was, with the amendment, does there need to be a time for public
No.
comments? There doesn't? Okay.
Are there any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin. Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G2, Mr.
Nope,
Manager?
that was to prove the amendment. Now you have to prove the ordinance as amended.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I forget that. We don't do this that often, so. All right. So, is there a motion to approve the ordinance as amended?
So moved.
Moved by
Support.
Commissioner Cooney, supported by Commissioner Anderson. Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Griffin.
Yes.
I
Commissioner
can
Urban.
do that.
There we go. Griffin sounds like Urban, and I overreact. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm in favor of this.
Mayor Hopewell,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried.
Thank
G2, Mr. Manager.
Adoption of a resolution urging the state legislature and governor to enact a statute to permit undocumented immigrant residents to apply for and receive a driver's license.
Anyone wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nelly Fuentes, and I reside in Kalamazoo. And before I speak on what I'm here to speak on, I would like just to take a moment to acknowledge the vicious murder of a woman here in Kalamazoo who is very loved and who I appreciate commissioners who are here bearing the pain. And yeah, if we could take just a moment for that, thank you. Thank you. So I am here to speak on for the resolution on driver's licenses. I appreciate Laura Lamb, who I have been emailing back and forth. And Cosecha has been emailing back and forth as well. I have a couple things to say about the resolution that was sent to us. And I just want to make sure to say that the words that were written on the original resolution are words of the undocumented community. And it's very disheartening that some words were changed. And so I'm going to read a paragraph that the undocumented community wrote, and it says, whereas we as a society welcome immigrant labor to grow our flowers, harvest and serve our food, building and maintain our houses, care for our loved ones, landscape our properties, and serve us in a myriad other ways. However, we as a society do not invite them to participate equally in our community. Rather, we as a society hypocritically and unjustly maintain them as underclass, separating their families and denying them basic human rights. And so that paragraph was, most of that paragraph was eliminated, and what was inserted was, the city of Kalamazoo has been recognized as a hospitable and welcoming community to immigrants from around the world who come seeking opportunity, stability, prosperity, education, and a better life for their families. And while this is definitely not true in most of our experiences, I am requiring an amendment to the language to this. So instead of it reading that the city of Kalamazoo has been recognized as a hospitable and welcoming community, it should read something like that the city of Kalamazoo is striving very hard to be a hospitable and welcoming community to immigrants from around the world, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of we already there, we're striving to get there, and it's a tough road. I know my time is going to be up real soon, so I just want to make sure that those words are included in the resolution. And I also want to make sure to thank whomever translated the resolution. It's a beautiful translation in Spanish. I was a little, we were very disheartened that the resolution wasn't attached to the agenda, since everybody was really eager to read and hear what the resolution was ended up being. So it would be great if we could hear it in English and in Spanish how it's going to be finalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Victoria Marsetti. I live in Kalamazoo. I'm here to echo the sentiments Nelly just brought to us as well. I'm really happy that we have your support I was really heartened to hear your support at the last meeting, that this wasn't going to be as big of a fight as we were trying to prepare for, so I do want to thank you for that. I do, however, feel that I need to address the change that was made in a very serious sentiment that was removed and replaced. And I'm going to repeat it again because it wasn't heard before. This is directly from the affected community. We welcome immigrant labor to grow our flowers, harvest and serve our food, build and maintain our houses, care for our loved ones, landscape our properties, and serve us in a myriad of other ways, but we as a society do not invite them to participate equally in our community. Rather, we as a society hypocritically and unjustly maintain them as underclass, separating their families and denying them basic human rights. Nellie did bring up a really easy change that we can make to this, and I feel like it's a Band-Aid at best, but I do hope that you can consider this amendment. And I can really only hope that this change in the wording was meant to show that you as representatives of our community are going to make sure that that paragraph in this resolution actually rings true, and that our undocumented folks who wrote this resolution originally will believe what it is that you passed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Sanchez. I live on Adelaide Street. First, I want to thank you for supporting the resolution that Cosecha has brought forth. And I also want to let you know that our community is desperate for driver's licenses. And in your positions, you guys can also write personal letters to the Governor and Secretary of State asking them to also approve driver's licenses for the state. On a daily, weekly basis, I take people from all around West Michigan to their immigration appointments that they cannot fail to attend. And it would be a lot easier for them to give that money to the state or pay their insurance or buy cars, and the economy would also improve all around if they had the accessibility to be able to do so. I'm here advocating myself out of a job because that's what we should do. And please also do your personal part in contacting your people that you guys have more access to than we do, and let them know that this needs to be passed. It's a right, it's a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Shana McLean, and I reside in Three Rivers. I'm speaking in inexplicable support of the driver's license resolution written by the undocumented community members that face these daily struggles as a result of driver's licenses being taken away from them in 2008. Since 2008, individuals and families have been forced to find other ways of transportation or risk driving without a license. And as a result, a culture of fear has been created, and people are put in a position where they have to make that decision to risk the safety of themselves and their families, or go to work, or go to school, or their doctor's appointments. Not having a driver's license is a gigantic barrier to meeting daily needs. And if Kalamazoo aspires to be hospitable and a welcoming community to immigrants who come here to seek a better life for themselves and their families, the city needs to hear the folks who are affected by this when they share their experiences of feeling unwelcome and underappreciated, and not overwrite their concerns by claiming Kalamazoo has already been recognized as welcoming and hospitable. And I encourage you to pass this resolution in support of the driver's licenses for all, and turn on the pressure to move forward with the state legislation that provides driving rights to folks no matter their status. And this is one important step towards dignity, respect, and permanent protection for the 11 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Megan Roche. I live at 1712 East Cork Street. I work for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and I formerly worked on our project, Welcoming Michigan, where I'm really excited for, that you had chosen to become a welcoming city. And so I understand that that's where the language came from, and it's it's really burning to think that that language came specifically in place of language expressed by the undocumented people who wrote the resolution, that was not their experience. And so I'm in complete and full support of Nellie's suggestion. I think, to Victoria's point, it is a Band-Aid at best, but I think that we, as a community, as someone who lives in Kalamazoo, I aspire to live in a community that is welcoming, where folks can experience belonging, but we aren't there yet. And I really think that that's a very, very easy fix. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Elvira Oropesa. I'm a Kalamazoo resident, and I'm here to speak in favor of the approval of the resolution. And I would like to point out just an observance, even while we are here today, as there have been other issues discussed. By a show of hands on your panel, who has actually looked up the bill that would authorize or grant licenses for undocumented immigrants and has found out the status of that bill? Has any of you? Knowing that this resolution was going to come up today, this week. There's been a week in between.
Ma'am, we'll let the commissioners comment when we go to make the vote. We don't respond back and forth at this point.
Okay, I can respect that. But again, an observation just about the previous speakers on the issue of granting licenses for marijuana as a business. I saw that there's discussion, there's awareness, there's been private discussions, it sounds like. And this is where we get the impression that our issues don't matter as much as a business. We are put way below that line, and observing it here firsthand, it really hits home. The fact that all of you are aware of their issues on licensing and zoning, and yet this issue is on the headlines, is parents being ripped up from their parents' arms, and in everything that's been in the national news. Just a reminder that that is happening here, that is happening in your community, and it's happening to our families. And we don't feel heard, yet we were here last week. And I hope that you will make some contact with the folks in Lansing and maybe get some of that information, and maybe also set up a contact with us as far as what we can do. We do believe in obeying laws, but first there has to be a way for us to obey those laws, that they're sitting as a bill somewhere in somebody's desk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Ruby Hernandez. I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I'm here to support licenses for the undocumented community. In our lifetime, we go through different types of fears. Some of them can include spiders, losing a loved one, or even dark places. As you might know, not having a license is one of the main reasons why many undocumented people get deported. One of my fears is coming home and not seeing my parents ever again. At the age of 14, this shouldn't be included in my list of fears. I just want them to be able to watch me walk across the stage and see me graduate high school. I want to stop having fear every time I spot a police car whenever my parents are driving. I want to be able to go places while fearing that there's no chance that they'll get deported. I think it's about time we deserve basic human rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address this item? Good evening.
My name is Esteban Juarez, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I just want to share a story about a man who came to the United States in the 50s. This man's first job was trimming dead palm trees, branches off palms for 23 cents a palm, right? And this man came to the United States hoping for a better life. Where he's from is Guanajuato, San Felipe. And this man came looking to prosper his life. And he had this idea of this place that could provide that for him, right? And so he came and he left his family behind and made it to the U.S. and landed a job in California, cutting dead palm leaves off palm trees, right? And he believed in working really hard. And this man was able to develop and create sustainability for himself and for his family. And he taught his family morals and ideas. And this man is my grandfather. His name is Feliciano Juarez. But he had a license. Before the licenses were taken away, he had passed away, right? And so my grandfather was able to buy a house on Washington Street, was able to start a business and contribute taxes to some of these things that are being paid for, but not now you're seeing that those opportunities, we can't reap that benefit now. So undocumented immigrants are paying taxes that provide these roads to be able to be paid for, fixed, and give us this opportunity to drive on these roads. But then they don't have the opportunity to use them. So for me, my grandfather had showed me a lot of things, right? And doing things the right way. So it's very important for us to know that those equal opportunities, when we're talking about or doing the Pledge of Allegiance, I started to think, man, where's the justice for the undocumented immigrants? Where's the pursuit to liberty? And you know, where is that at for our people, right? And so it only makes sense that undocumented immigrants contribute tax dollars to pay for these roads, right? And so you have to be aware of the amount of tax dollars that undocumented immigrants contribute to our state, to our city. And that's one of the things my grandfather did. And he taught me those things. So then now I am a taxpayer and I contribute to the city and to the state, right? And so as a contributing taxpayer, I say that we should allow the resolution to pass and give opportunities to undocumented immigrants just as we have the same opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Hi, my name, sorry, Lisa Ernst. I live in Kalamazoo, and I'm here to support passing the resolution to give undocumented individuals licenses. Like other people have stated, this isn't a new thing. This wouldn't be a radical change. Up until 2008, this was the norm. Everybody could get one. That's only 11 years ago. That's basically nothing. On top of that, 13 other states already allow this still today. Illinois does, right next door. Nobody wants to be worse than Illinois, and right now we are. But I also want to speak in favor of Nelly's suggestion of restoring the undocumented community's words to this resolution. If we want the words that were inserted in there to be true, to say that we are welcoming, that we're a hospitable community, that we love immigrants, and that we want to embrace everybody, we can't speak over them. We cannot erase the community that is affected's words and put our own in there and make it the world that we wish we had. We need to work to that, and a way to work to that and strive towards being that welcoming community, being that welcoming world, being equal and keeping everybody in our community, the visible, the invisible, the documented, the undocumented, the people who are our brothers, our sisters, our coworkers, the people we pass on the street, and the people we buy stuff from at the store. We need to pass this because actions are what matters, not words. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm gonna talk about an experience that I had.
Can we have your name and whether you live in the city?
My name is Valentin Bello. I live in Kalamazoo. And this is about driver's licenses. I had an experience, I can't remember when was it. Few experiences. One of them is I don't have a driver's license, right? So this police officer on Miller Road saw me and stopped me for, I guess, nothing. I didn't do anything. I stopped at the light stop. So she followed me, and then she approached to me and saw me as the guy that I am, right? So anyways, she stopped me and she gave me a ticket. So she's like, if you want to fight the ticket, you can go to court. So I did. I went to court. For the same reason, I saw another guy in there. So we look at each other and we're like, what are you doing here? And he's like, same thing. So we already know when there's a Mexican guy in there, what for? What is it for? No license. So we came to the judge. He talked to him, and he got stopped at Portage, and I got stopped in Kalamazoo. He got ticket, I got ticket. This guy, the prosecutor from Portage, he said, just show me a Mexican driver's license, and you know, you're not going to have the ticket. So I talked to my prosecutor, which is from Kalamazoo, and I showed it to him. I said, hey, I got my driver's license from Mexico. And he's like, no, that doesn't work in here. So you got your ticket. So we came to the judge, and the judge says, so I see you don't have a license. I said, I have a license from my country. So he's like, let me see it. So he came over and saw it. Then I saw both of the prosecutors, they talk each other, and they said, hey, they can drive with a driver's license from their country. And the prosecutor from Kalamazoo is like, not in my town. So the judge came over and talked to them. My friend, they let him go without paying anything, and they told me that I have to pay my ticket. Same reason. The difference was he was in Portage, and I was in Kalamazoo. I got stopped in here. So what I'm asking you is, if you pass that resolution, if this is going through the process and everything, it's going to help us a lot. Because on top of that, I have to pay the ticket, and then there's some other payments that I have to do. It's called driver's responsibility fee. 2 times, 1 per year, 500. Back then I was working at a greenhouse, making 300 a week, but I have to pay that, and I did.
Sir, your time has expired, but thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Ryan Pate. I live on Lake Street. I want to speak in favor of the resolution as presented. The language shouldn't be eliminated or edited. I want to say nobody's illegal on stolen land. And yeah, I'm also disappointed that it wasn't on the agenda in more than just English for reasons. Yeah, and I think as has been talked about so many times, licenses are used as an excuse to detain people. I know 2 people that were detained, I believe in Grand Rapids, taken to Calhoun County, because that's where it's like the staging area for, you name it. Let's see, yeah, one of them was over 65, wasn't given his blood pressure medication, wasn't given his glasses. They were both held in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. They both paid thousands to get out. I don't think they were ever charged with a crime. I don't think there was ever a suspicion of a crime. They didn't have court dates. Yeah. And so being that the license excuse is used so many times to do things like that to people, we need to pass a resolution as presented without the eliminated language. And, you know, people deserve licenses just flat out anyway. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Buenas tardes. Good evening. My name is Daniel Oropesa from Kalamazoo. And there is a lot of things have been happening in our city, in our nation, but we're focusing in Kalamazoo today. What I have in my hand here is 20 different flags from South America. With that being said, I'm representing every single person that could not make it here because they do not have a valid driver's license. And I'm representing them because you see it all over, you see it on social media, you guys see it on TV, you guys see it or broadcast differently. Just because you have a brown skin and my color of my hair, the only people that are just not have the common sense and ignorant, they only think of Mexicanos. That's the only thing. I could have brought 200 more flags because there's other people, not only from Sudamerica, Salvadoreños, Cubanos, Dominican Republic, I mean, the list goes on and on. But I want to make a point to all of you, everyone in that panel, and everyone behind me. We have goals every day. We have goals, we have jobs. Either we go to school, out of town, here in the panel, yourself. We need to think with a third eye each and every day. We all come from different nationalities. We all come different backgrounds, different cultures. And I salute every group and organization that's making a difference in our Kalamazoo community. If I did not have a valid driver's license myself, I would not be where I'm at today. I'm a superintendent for 20-something years. I do community annual events for the homeless, for Puerto Rico, you name it. I'm out there. There's some times that I'm out there, and the excuses that I do get from the south side, from the west side, even a few people from the north side over there on Princeton Street, they can't attend because they do not have a valid driver's license. There's criteria, we already know that. And there's a lot of different directions, but we need to think outside the box on a daily, it's a goal. A lot of people say it's brave and free. I think we live in a place that is dreams and opportunity. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Pearl Brown. I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, obviously. I am here to speak in favor of the resolution with the amendment that Nellie had suggested to reflect the voices of the undocumented community. Please vote yes on this, and what I'm understanding is that you guys are already leaning towards that, but it also helps protect the undocumented community against the predatory acts of ICE and this administration that we have currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission on this item? Good evening.
Hello. Hola. My name is Lisbeth Fuentes. Me llamo Lisbeth Fuentes. Y les voy a decir por qué estamos aquí. Nosotros estamos aquí como Movimiento Cosecha. Estamos aquí pidiendo que pasen la resolución a favor de las licencias de manejo que todos necesitamos. Nosotros los inmigrantes de Kalamazoo les damos nuestro trabajo, nuestros impuestos, ¿a cambio de qué? De que su gobierno nos trate como personas de segunda clase, nos criminalizan y disminuyen nuestra humanidad. Lo mínimo, lo más mínimo que pueden hacer por nosotros es apoyar la resolución que nosotros escribimos y honrar los cambios que nosotros les estamos diciendo que hagan. So we are here today. I am here today, me with the community. We are here asking you to vote in favor of the resolution for driver's licenses for all. We, the immigrant community in Kalamazoo, we give you our labor. We give you our taxes. And you don't have a problem taking any of that. In return, you treat us as second-class people. You dehumanize us, you treat us as and you criminalize us. The minimum, the very minimum you can do for the immigrant community here in Kalamazoo is to support our resolution and to make the amendments we are asking you to do.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission on this? Thank you. Seeing no one. Before we get to motions, I guess I'm looking for the why this was changed, because I'm compelled to ask. The mayor can't make motions. It's just the rules of Roberts. But I would prefer to see the original resolution, because I don't know what the why is. If we want to celebrate, and I normally don't do this, I know, I normally don't, but if we want to celebrate being a welcoming community, adding that, I'm probably A-okay with adding that in. But I don't know why, unless there's a legal why we took out that wording. I guess I'm asking the attorney this, or I don't know who worked on it. So, Mr. Attorney, is there a why that came up?
Yes, there was. The wording of the original resolution made no reference to why the law was changed in 2008. And so there was language added because it was for the state of Michigan to comply with the Real ID Act that was passed by Congress in 2005, in which most states, with one exception, I think Oregon's got an exception, but all other states have to be in compliance with the Real ID Act by the end of the year. Now, the Real ID Act means that you get a star on your license, and if you've renewed it in the last few years, that permits you to get on board an airplane and go to certain federal facilities without having to have other ID. That serves as your ID. Now, if you don't have the Real ID, and when I renewed my license last year, I didn't bother with it. Then you have to take your passport with you if you're going to get on a plane and the like. So you don't need a Real ID. The Department of Homeland Security says states are free to issue your own non-Real ID driver's licenses and identification cards. So that's a significant recognition that was not in the original resolution. So that's one thing. Secondly, and there's a listing of the states were listed. There's several states, I think 13 or a dozen, that have said we're going to issue our own ID, and the state of Michigan could do so. Now, to one woman's question, while the speakers were addressing the commission, I'm not aware of any bill that's currently before the Michigan legislature that would change the law, because otherwise, right now, you have to prove legal presence in this country to get a Michigan driver's license, so as to comply with the Real ID. Now, the legislature could change that if they wanted to, but I'm not aware of any pending bill that has been submitted to that end. So that's the second reason is if this resolution is going to advocate, you've got to convince the legislature why you should change. And the language that was while I think that probably Representative Hoadley and Senator McCann would have no problem in sponsoring such legislation, their party isn't in control of the legislature. So I wanted to make sure that I attempted to make the resolution one that would advocate and try to convince people who might otherwise be in favor of this change to look favorably upon it. The other thing that was done is that this commission adopted a resolution, I don't remember when exactly, that proclaimed Kalamazoo a welcoming community. The language that is in there is taken directly out of a resolution that you've already adopted. So, and then the language was, again, regarding the growing the flowers and harvesting, and that was modified again as to apply to and see if you could convince people who might otherwise be in favor of this change to think about it and to be in favor of the change. So that was why some of the language was changed, both to make, I guess, a recognition of where we stand legally in regard to the federal law. Secondly, to be an advocacy resolution, because we're asking a Republican legislature to make a change and to, I guess, reflect what the city of this body has said in the past about us being a welcoming community to all people, regardless of where they are coming from.
Okay, so we're still in question mode, I guess. So, Commissioner Urban, I saw you first.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I was not present at the meeting a week, 2 weeks ago on this issue. So some of what I say may be...
well, the questions right now.
Yeah. Well, what I would like to have clarified is the amendment that was referred to this evening. It's called the Nelly Amendment. Does anybody have a copy of that up here? Do you have a copy of it? Could we obtain a copy of it quickly so we can see exactly what we might agree to if we consider it carefully? Because words make a big difference here, and the fact that when I heard the amendment that Nelly proposed using the word striving, that seems exactly the kind of sentiment I want to have conveyed in anything that we approve here. So I want to be sure there's everything else down to the exact words are equally powerful, and none there that are not adequate to represent the cause that we have here. As far as worrying about the Republican legislature, well, that's out of our hands.
Let's hold that for discussion. Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, this question is for the city attorney. Just to clarify again, because the changes that I'm hearing from the community don't sound like the changes that you're describing. So what I'm hearing is the language as far as us being welcoming and striving to get there. If we keep that language in there, does that change the legalities?
No.
Okay.
Other questions for the attorney? Mr. Anderson.
Not being an attorney, I understand that there may be some specific legal language that it would have been good to include in the resolution that was proposed at our last meeting. However, by including some specific details in the request, then some language that was from the prior resolution, was left on the table, the cutting room floor, so to speak.
Questions?
Yes. So I guess at this point, what I'm trying to say is that, is it possible for us to bring those two things together at this point now, so we have something, or is that a more complicated undertaking to try to do that?
Complicated undertaking, because I took what was presented to the city commission and did the legal research and tried to come up with something that would be an affirmative statement by this city commission urging the legislature to adopt or enact legislation that would address the issue that was being presented to the city commission. So that was the thrust of the changes that were made was to make it an action piece directed to the state legislature from this body on behalf of these individuals who reside in our community.
Commissioner Urban?
Well, I think I'm going to be probably making statements instead of questions, but I would really like to know what the next step is going to be, because I'm not done with my what I want to see happen here, but it's in the form of a statement or a request, and I just want to know at what point I can make that.
So, you know, I sort of lit this flame. We need a motion on the floor to discuss the item. There needs to be a motion. And it has to be in the affirmative, just explaining to the community you can't motion against. It needs to be in the affirmative. And then we discuss from there. So,
Okay, I can do
we
that.
need a motion.
Okay, well,
And the requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution.
this is going to be a motion to amend the resolution, because we have to have amendments before we have adopting the motion.
You have to move for the adoption of the resolution first.
Okay, well, I'll leave it to someone else to do that, because I'm not in favor of the resolution as it stands.
Okay, for discussion purposes and to move this along, I move to adopt the resolution.
Support.
A motion by Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Cunningham. I'm going to dive in first again, since my point, okay, I wasn't at the other meeting, so I apologize. My intent was to bring the language back regarding the piece that has concern, because no one commented on the legal piece that you talked about, and I don't think anyone has a concern with us stating what we did, because we did do it. We affirmed that such and such and such. But leaving the language in there, I appreciate the advocacy that we're trying to make with the state legislature and all of that stuff. You know, we know who we're dealing with. We do. And it's a challenge no matter what. Let's leave that piece in. Keep the legal change that you made, and everybody saw the piece that was taken out, so we already know what it is. And then if we want to have that we have the resolution or what have you as a welcoming city, then that can be in there, but not having to take anything else out to replace that, I guess, is what I would prefer to see. So, anyway, but again, I don't get to make motions.
Well, frankly, including that phrase, being a welcoming community, that sounds sort of self-congratulatory, and I don't think that really reflects the sentiment of the people who brought the resolution to our attention. So as long as that part is in there, even though we declared ourselves that in another context, I'm content with that being where it is. But on this resolution, I just as soon see that part deleted and Nellie's amendment replacing it. Whatever needs to be happening to make that happen, I'll be supporting.
Commissioner Anderson?
So there is a motion on the floor that's been made and supported. So speaking specifically about that motion, I'm not going to vote for that motion that was made and supported to, but the reason we made that motion is so we could have this discussion about it. So I initially asked, I really hate to take a motion and try to write the whole thing tonight, kind of on the dais. It's the best way to approach this. I happened to be out of town last week, but we had talked about it. The best way to approach this, if you're thinking about, here's some additions that can make this motion more effective and better, you do that work. City attorney, specialist in that work, appreciate that work, and then you take that motion and you discuss that with the people who have originally brought it forward, and then you land on something, and then you know what you're going to be doing that night. You've got that motion written, you've gone back and forth, you've agreed on it. And so that was what I would have hoped would have transpired, between last meeting and this meeting, but it isn't. So I am suggesting now that we put this on our next agenda and we come back with the motion. I mean, I don't know how we're going to write this thing with it not in front of us tonight, unless you think there's some way we can do that.
Well, I would point out, Commissioner, that my original draft was shared with representatives through Laura Lamb, who had a contact, and we got feedback. Changes were made based upon that feedback, and then that's what you have here this evening. So there was some back and forth. I wanted to make sure that you weren't under the impression that there wasn't. And as I understood what was being suggested as an amendment, maybe I didn't get it all, but it was in paragraph 5 that the objection was that the city of Kalamazoo has been recognized as a hospitable and welcoming community. The suggestion was changing that language to the city of Kalamazoo strives to be a hospitable and welcoming community. If that's the essence of the amendment, I think you can make that very easily.
Commissioner Griffin.
It just seems to me that it doesn't seem like we need to draw this out. It seems very clear to me that from the comments from the community, the changes that you made with respects to the legalities, I didn't hear that they had any issues with those. The most important issue is the voice of the community, and that stay in there. And from what Nellie suggested, it's just a word of support, but we need to leave it the way they wrote it, with the exception of the changes that you made that did not get brought up here today. Change that language back. We are striving to be that community, and by doing it that way, that would be a great way to show that.
Commissioner Cooney?
I think that was very well put, and I totally agree with that. I appreciate the effort to try to placate the Republican legislature, but I am not at all satisfied that that would make any difference to them. I think what is most important is that we respond to the voices of the community that brought forth the original resolution, and we do just what Patrice said.
And it's, and I don't do this as often, we have resolutions that we change. I mean, people bring us resolutions that we change, and sometimes we don't vote for them. We had one related to Israel a few weeks ago that really, this is about our community. That one was more broad, and it was just harder to figure out if we should do anything. But want to be clear on what you said has two different, at least I take it two different ways. What I heard what was being asked for, if we're going to leave that part, that we put striving in there, but we didn't reinsert the words that were there. That was the compromise. To me, I'd rather insert the words back, put that piece at the end if we want, or eliminate, and go on about approving this. That's what I believe. And I don't see, and Commissioner Anderson, I'm just going to disagree, I don't see this as a hard thing to do because we've had that language. It's not as if it's language that's being introduced that we didn't have, and we also have the language that the attorney presented. So it's not like we don't have all the information here before us. But again, I don't get to ask, I can ask you to make a motion, but I don't get to do it. I'm going to go Commissioner Urban, then Commissioner Anderson.
Well, I think we may be close to the point where we could have Patrice make a replacement motion once or we could just vote down the motion that Mr. Anderson had raised for purposes of discussion. But it sounded to me like what you had proposed is exactly what we need to have happen. And so I'm just thinking, what is the quickest way to get there? And we can wrap it up tonight.
Commissioner Anderson?
So along those lines, we're kind of moving to a slightly different topic here because we have a motion on the floor, but it seems that we need to at least read that motion once into the record in its new version that has not been, you know, written yet, right? Because we're making another version of it this evening. Is that accurate? Are we just, I just want to be clear on anything that I vote on, that I know exactly what I'm doing.
Well,
I'm going to go to Commissioner Cunningham.
yeah, he's next, yes, yes.
There's a couple questions. Attorney Robinson, are you currently working on adjusting those documents right
Yes.
now? I think that we can give him a few minutes, allow him to work through that information, and then we can effectively make an amendment or motion otherwise.
Commissioner Irvin?
I just want to reiterate, if the city attorney is drafting an acceptable version here, that the new version delete the phrase, the self-congratulatory phrase. I don't think we're really quite ready for that yet, but we can vote on it either way, but that's my preference. I just want to be sure that's out there. If anyone else cares to weigh in on that and giving the attorney some guidance, feel free to do so.
Just to be clear, and I'm agreeing with you, Mayor, if we can return it to the language that was originally there, that would be the easiest. Yes, they were willing to make a compromise and say that, but if we can just take it back to as far as the language that's being raised up here, if we can just take it back to what it originally was, that's what I'm looking for.
In that one paragraph.
That
You're
one,
talking about
that one section, yeah.
Is that your motion?
If we can do that now, yes,
To amend. It's a motion to amend.
Well, he's already
I would
working on
second
it
that.
to present. He's already working on it to present. I would just allow him to do that.
Why make it so complicated?
Yeah. So this thing is still broke? It's still broke. It's a hot mic, whether it's on, I think yours was broke last time.
So, I know we have a motion on the floor for the original resolution. To change that, we would have to amend the resolution, and we would vote on that amendment. And then we would vote on the resolution as amended, just like we did the last time, which I screwed up the last time. So it's my understanding that the resolution that was in the packet is going to be amended to remove the welcoming city section and reinsert the language that was originally in the document as presented in that section. Maybe not, I probably blew it with that section part, but.
Okay. I guess I need direction from the commission as to what they want done, but here's where we're at.
Okay.
The second paragraph in the resolution, those of you who can get it in front of you. I'm sorry, the third paragraph would be rewritten to read as follows. That we as a society welcome immigrant labor to grow our flowers, harvest and serve our food, build and maintain our homes, care for our loved ones, landscape our properties, and serve us in a myriad of other ways. Oh, there's a word missing there. Semicolon. However, as a society, we do not invite them to participate equally in our community. Semicolon. Instead, we as a society hypocritically and unjustly maintain them as an another missing word, and underclass separating their families and denying them basic human rights, semicolon. Now I'm adding this language. Without a driver's license, because this is the thrust of what we're talking about, without a driver's license, they are unable to participate fully and equally in our community, semicolon. Next paragraph, which is unchanged. Now, in regard to the welcoming, you can either leave this in or change it. The change would be the city of Kalamazoo strives to be a hospitable and welcoming community to immigrants from around the world who come seeking opportunity, stability, prosperity, education, and a better life for their families. Do you want that in or out?
It's
fine.
It's fine the way someone has to make a motion. If you feel that you can say it as stated.
Okay, yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve this resolution as you just read it.
Is there support?
Second.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Is there discussion on the amendment?
I have one.
Commissioner?
I do want to say thank you for the work that you put in regards to trying to accommodate. I know that we have to be intentional when we talk about how we use diplomacy, and I think that is something that Attorney Robinson tried to bring to the table, and I appreciate that effort. I think that I applaud also my colleagues for looking for that blunt and straightforward conversation also. So I don't know how impactful this opportunity will be, but I think it signifies the energy that needs to be behind those in our community who need more voices and more action items. And so I am appreciative, Attorney Robinson, of your work. Thank you.
Other discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried on the amendment. We need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion? And I just want to echo Commissioner Cunningham's comments. And there was no intent here. It was an intent to try to figure out, can we really move somebody to do the right thing? That was the intent. And also to state an action that we did take as a welcoming community. Whether we still have to live up to that, we know we do, but it was an action that was taken, and I think that was the other intent, to include that in there. Hearing no further discussion, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G3, Mr. Manager.
Approval of an agreement with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to accept a special appropriation of $298,500 made under Public Act 618 for the removal of Millam Park Dam.
Anyone wanting to speak on G3, please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one on G3, Commissioners, the requested actions, a motion to, I'm sorry. I didn't.
My name is Ryan Pate. I live on Lake Street. I would just say if you're going to remove a dam, you really need to look at the flooding that's going to happen there. I live on Lake Street, and it floods when it rains. When somebody spits on the street, it floods. And the solution can't be to block the south side off from the rest of town. Lives continue, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item?
Hello, I'm Jody. I live in Kalamazoo. Is there a way that the dam could be put into a filtration system so that the waters beyond it can be filtered out for the clean, rivers under the trestles going along, the trees on the side? Where do the waters go?
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item regarding the Millam Dam? Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve the agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cooney,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes. Motion carried. G4, Mr. Manager.
Approval of an agreement with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Agreement DM 18-008, for a grant to assist with the removal of the Millen Park Dam in an amount equal to 12% of the eligible project cost, $415,000, up to $50,000, and appropriate and make available the remaining project cost of $365,000.
Anyone wanting to comment on G4, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve the agreement. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Cooney. Discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, you have a report this evening?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to just talk a little bit about what we're anticipating later this week, an extreme heat event coming late Wednesday through Saturday. Our Department of Public Service, or Public Safety, has been working with the County Emergency Services Department and the Health Department and are monitoring the situation. And the following steps are being taken in preparation for a potential extreme heat emergency. First, Public Services has identified locations within the city to open hydrants with diffusers as a cooling station for people. Next, Public Safety will start social media messaging beginning tomorrow to include warning signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And Public Safety will also be meeting tomorrow to discuss contingencies as well as prep for the weekend weather. The topics of the discussion include utilizing a community engagement team to reach out to vulnerable populations, identify potential cooling centers to be utilized in the event of a heat emergency, and develop contingencies should a widespread power outage occur, exacerbating the issue of the high heat. And Public Safety will also continue to communicate with the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Services Department, and be prepared to escalate our response if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney, you have a report this evening?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Clerk, you have a report?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. J1, please.
Adoption of a revised investment policy which sets forth the city's investment guidelines and priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on J1? J1, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
I'll just make this really quick. For what you're talking about
We
for
get
power.
your name and whether you live in the city, please.
Oh, again? Yeah, Chris Wonhoff, 1407 Bryant Street. I just want to kind of add for where to put feedback, I guess, if you're talking about how to prepare for power outages. I helped with New York.
Sir, this is about J1, the investment policy. Citizens' comments come after that on general items.
I thought this was about. I thought that this included the.
No,
the,
we didn't take any
Oh,
action.
this
on that.
doesn't go on the report. This wasn't for the report.
No, this item right now that we're on is J1, the adoption of the investment policy, but you can comment on citizens' comments on the other item.
Later.
When we don't take action, that's not a citizen comment.
Okay, that's where I'm wrong. Okay.
He was just reporting. Yeah. Anyone else wanting to comment on J1? Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the policy. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Now we're at citizens' comments on anything this evening. Please step forward if you Give us your name and whether you live within the city. You'll have 4 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ann Renz. I live in Kalamazoo. And I came here because of issues like extreme heat events that will continue to increase if we don't take action on climate change. The best first step, according to 3,500 economists, is to price carbon. At the recent annual Conference of Mayors, there was a resolution for federal carbon pricing. And I understand that it passed with a large body of support, with only 7 negative votes. I'm really hopeful that our mayor voted in support of it. I hadn't realized that there's no feedback from the body up there to those out here. But I'd like to be able to celebrate that as bipartisan local support for carbon action. And I also sent each of the commissioners ahead of time, knowing that I was going to be here, information about the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Many cities have supported it, mayors have supported it, city council and commission members have supported it. I don't intend to take up your time now to talk about it, but I'm hopeful that if you have questions about it, we could talk and I can encourage you to support that. It's very easy on the link that I sent you to endorse online, very, very easy. And I think that will provide feedback to our state, our federal legislators, that this community has a lot of support for federal carbon pricing, especially when it returns the monies collected as a dividend to offset the increased costs. So it protects the most vulnerable, and studies of it show that it's the best of all carbon pricing plans at reducing emissions quickly, something that we really need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jody. I live in Kalamazoo. I've been talking a lot about Stadium Drive apartments. And after I wrote my project, I had a lot of troubles. I had troubles with house break-ins, money missing, others. I've had several people come to me and be on my side. I've had this one lady who picked on many people and never got thrown out. I hope to write reports on this. Right now my son moved into an apartment and I got him settled in. Hopefully he can give me a couple more weeks and I can start to type some paperwork up. You know, I'm devastated by cats missing. I've had professional substance abuse people come and talk to me and guide me and be there for me. They were just beautiful. Some were beautiful. Some were stricken by something, stalking issues. I've had a rabbit with its head cut off thrown in my son's backyard. I mean, I'm sure other people are experiencing similar stalkings for fear factors. Now at Stadium Drive Apartments, I'm hearing of cats missing. I wouldn't doubt that the cats were being tortured and killed and somewhere buried in the muck back there. I have ideas of who. In question about how to handle the situation, what to say properly. Right in front of the substance abuse man, 2 of the ladies said, yeah, their cat was traumatized, disappeared for a week, came back, and was hiding under the bed, traumatized. I mean, my cats, I'd come home from the football game, Super Bowl, go to the store to buy something to cook, come back and my cats would be trembling in the closet. I mean, somehow these people were getting keys, getting into the apartments, stuff missing, cats traumatized, cats missing. I'm sure there's dead cats that have never returned, which is odd. You know, and then to top that, I go to Pathways and I've talked about mailboxes and things not getting across properly or feeling that my mail's not getting in. Well, they're calling me paranoid. You're delusional, you're paranoid. Well, here I have a $13,000, $14,000 bill from where my mail at Pathways did not go through. And because of that, the result is I have to pay this student loan now, where when I mailed it off, it was in that mailbox wide open. I wouldn't be paying this. I'd be dismissed on keeping up on my records with them. You know, there's a few places and I'm just getting behind, and just as soon as I start to get ahead, it's like I'm kicked back 2 or 3 steps and I can't write the reports, I'm not getting things across. You know, I'm going places, people are being, there's fear factors. I can't see any other reason why. I mean, I do good deeds. I have stuff that the police station could do for the neighborhoods, you know, as long as they can profit up. My operational horse operational table is now, I gotta look into my papers, but I have papers missing. And I'm just wondering, you know, stuff being stolen, the librarian prints my stuff out wrong after tampering with it a little bit. I'm just experiencing a lot of trauma, a lot of troubles, and all stemming from Stadium Drive Apartments, me writing my project, and like I say, KVCC, things are missing, papers were scrambled around, people are scrambled around, so I have a hard time staying on track.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Evans. I just appreciate you guys, and I just started coming to the commission meetings maybe a year ago, I guess. I'm here to learn some stuff because you have all kind of things going on here, but it's very exciting. And I wanted to say, I don't know if the lady came up and said she wanted to do a moment of silence for Shaquetta Lewis. I didn't hear who she was talking about. Is that who she was talking about? For her being murdered today. I did want to say that for sure. And to thank you guys. And I wanted to say that since I've been coming, I see different groups come here. When Maddie was coming for the north side, then the homeless people come and they express themselves to you guys. Now this group is coming, they're gone now. I wanted to say it in front of them. They come for support too. You guys can only do so much. I realize that. I used to say, oh, they know they can do that. But I thank you guys because I try to say, Maddie came here, she wants this. The north side, the Vine Street, they want stuff. But I said, if we all work together, because we all got issues in this town. I just found out I live in a township, so certain things I can't vote for. So I was like, so do I give another address or move somewhere? That's just something I'm just trying to blabber out about. But that's something different about what I'm trying to say here. But they all left. So I didn't really get to say anything to them. I just wanted to say something to them. But I thank you guys, because what I was going to say, they not here no more. So thank you so much, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Evening. My name is Andy Argo. I live in the Vine neighborhood. I actually just wanted to come up here real quick and bring up an issue. While I was out canvassing yesterday, I talked to a gentleman who wanted me to bring an issue to the commission's attention this evening. They live on the 600 block of Ransom, and they want to get a speed hump put on along the side of the street. In my conversation with them, they said that a lot of people push the speed limit when they're going down that street, said it's a danger to the residents on that street as well as children. What he told me is that he had contacted the city about it previously and had been told, I believe his specific words were that he was told because of something involving the snow plow and the overall cost, it would be difficult to get a speed hump put in there. I do know, just anecdotally, these kind of speed humps have been put in comparable streets. The street, Maple Street between Burdick and Westnedge is a good example. I will admit I didn't have time to research this myself, so maybe there's an obvious answer to this that I am missing. But I just did want to bring it to the commission's attention. Normally I would promise to stay after the meeting and talk to you all about it. I actually am late for another meeting, but I will pass my contact information along to the clerk, although I know most of you on the board know how to get a hold of me. easiest way for me is usually either my phone number or through Facebook. Again, hope to hear back from somebody, at least just kind of a resource I can point this gentleman towards. If not, I'll go ahead and do that research myself, and I will go ahead and give my contact information to the clerk on the way out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
All right. Chris Wilmoff, 1407 Bryant Street. I'll try and get these two out quick. The first one about the emergency, something called MeshNet technology. It's open source. Anybody that puts a little bit of this code into their phone allows them to even use an unused phone to contact other people. And what we did in New York after the hurricane is people that could go and use their phones would call people out of state like myself so that we could take support off of the emergency services, because when the hurricane came, everybody got hit. I imagine with the capacity in Kalamazoo, something like that could be really useful. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, it's open source, it's something you could put on a post in Facebook, and then anybody who doesn't have a phone, as long as they have a phone around, and the way the technology works, it bounces off other phones in the area. So a populated city like Kalamazoo can make anybody have an emergency way to get a hold of somebody else that isn't reliant on just trying to get through to the police.
Could you spell it just?
MeshNet.
Mesh.
Yep. So that's free. Go look for it. The second is I'm going to push back on you about the zoning with the building because as I tried last one, and I will try with every city commission for the last 3 years, I've been trying to build a program, and the site map that I can't get approved is dependent on the zoning. I've had 3 years, the worst 3 years of my entire life have been about trying to comply and ways to comply with the city on zoning to make a kids program. So I urge the commission, now that it's already passed, look at ways to regulate what is reasonable to be approved for a site map, because otherwise it's up to whoever is in charge, and they play favorites. I'm going to come back with mine. I've been trying 3 years, and I'm going to come back every meeting with you guys until I get the program I'm doing. I want you to understand, it is impossible, unless you are a certain person, it is impossible to get site mapping passed here. I had $100,000 that I could have put to a program, and your people wouldn't let me say yes to let kids play with ducks. You've seen how hard it is when everybody's trying to be on the same page. Imagine when there's no oversight, because it's an open ballgame for them. Like I said, I'll be back in 2 weeks. But take it seriously, because if you really do want to help the kids in the neighborhood, marijuana is how they want to go. Every kid, that's where they're looking. And they're watching the Laura meetings too. We all are. So, I mean, a lot of us are up on it. If you really want to give these kids a chance, you need to not just say, well, as long as it's depending on the site map, that's good. Because the city uses those details for control. Like I said, 3 years, $100,000 that got passed up to get ducks in Addison neighborhood for kids to learn about farming. So take it seriously, because we're right in between Chicago and Detroit. This is the spot, and these kids are ready. And you're going to cut them out if you don't pay more attention. Sitemap is not going to do it. I'm looking you in the eye, and I'm looking you in the eye. And I'm telling both of you, your departments do not get it done, and you're going to hurt kids if you don't take it more seriously than you do. Please, commissioners, look into this. I'll be back in 2 weeks about the ducks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello again. I just wanted to extend our thanks on behalf of all the families that were here tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to make the necessary changes and for approving the resolution. Again, I just wanted to thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Jeff Messer, city resident. Concern has been expressed tonight about city zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission is where you begin if you want to change city zoning ordinance. I would like to invite the public to come to Planning Commission meetings and express their concerns about city zoning. Those meetings have general non-agenda public comment opportunities, just like we're having right now. The Planning Commission meets in this room, City Commission Chambers, on the second floor of City Hall, 241 West South Street, on the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m., except like last Thursday when it was Independence Day. Their practice is if they can't hold the meeting on the regularly scheduled date, they move it to the following Tuesday. Zoning is in the news, as I'm sure maybe Rebecca Kick and our city planner know about. In Minneapolis, they're going through the process of repealing their single-family zoning, as the city of Kalamazoo has in the Arcadia neighborhood. That's what the citizens have requested, but just as an example of where RS5 zoning exists in Kalamazoo. So if you want to know what they're doing in Minneapolis is they're having a housing shortage, and it's creating an affordable housing problem, and they're trying to address this by increasing the housing supply, and their housing supply has been limited because of too much single-family zoning. And so they're eliminating the single-family zoning and allowing duplexes and triplexes in areas where previously only single-family zoning was permitted. So if anyone would like to read more on that particular issue, just use your favorite news search engine and just search Minneapolis single-family zoning. And there's one other thing, but if I can't remember, then it doesn't matter. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Seeing no one, we are at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, I just want to take the time, and it's been brought up twice here today, but we've had a lot of loss in this community over the past few weeks, and I just want to take the time to acknowledge the families and just send love and light to them. We have children that are going to be without parents, parents that are going to be without their children, and so on and so forth. So to the Lewis family, the Anderson family, the Witherspoon family, and any other families that have been affected today or over the last few weeks, I just want to send my sincerest condolences to them, and just know that there's a plethora of different reasons why these lives were lost, but ultimately the entire community feels that, and just in these down times, if there's something that you feel like you can do, let's remember that there's always a chance for these things to happen. And so in between time, to become active, to get involved in your community, I would ask that everybody do that, and not just when there's tragedy that strikes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson?
I echo the words of Commissioner Griffin.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to do something tonight I rarely do. I'm going to thank and praise Congressman Fred Upton. Over the weekend, the President of the United States made a series of racist, sexist remarks against 4 women who are members of Congress. His remarks, his comments were a betrayal of all the ideals that this country professes. Almost no Republicans spoke out against what he said. But our congressman had the courage and the decency to speak out. And I want to read his remarks. Frankly, I'm appalled by the president's tweets. There is no excuse. Inflammatory rhetoric from both sides of the aisle that is used to divide us just isn't right. It is not helpful. We have too many challenges facing us that we ought to be working on together. Immigration, the debt ceiling, the border crisis. The president's tweets were flat out wrong and uncalled for, and I would encourage my colleagues from both sides that we ought to be working together. We should stop talking so much and start governing more. So I thank Congressman Upton. I called his office today to thank him for his remarks and for his courage.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Urban?
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. Well, I wanted to, well, I'm pleased with the outcome of the resolution that we resolved this evening. was a little bit behind the 8 ball because I missed the first meeting. So I hope that by our being forthright and being frank in that resolution, that actually conveys the energy that's behind it. It may actually have more effect than trying to appease the current Republican legislature. That's an issue that the whole dynamic is a national issue. But turning back to something that's a little bit more local, I wanted to just endorse what Mrs. Rent said about the carbon costing. That's a carbon fee with dividend. Now, the way that works is it's not the old-fashioned carbon tax. It has what happens with the money that's raised with a fee on carbon generation, carbon dioxide generation, is that the extra revenue that comes to the federal government on account of that to help wean us away from climate changing gases being released, is that the extra money that the federal government would obtain is returned to every citizen in the country. It's just flat out given out, so that there's no net gain to the federal government on account of this. This helps. This should help its passage, and its support in the Congress has been growing in spite of what President Trump has been trying to do. So I'm maybe not very eloquent about it right now, but I hope that you'll pay attention to further developments in that area, and Mary Ellen Rent is a good local resource for learning more about that. I think that's all for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cunningham?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I just want to echo the comments of my colleague, Ms. Lewis, in regards to those who have passed away. And as a community, I always advise for us to continue to find ways to support and love one another, fill in for those gaps at times like this when crises has struck. Even for those, so even in this scenario with Ms. Lewis, there was a life lost, there are youth who are impacted, and there are family members who are impacted. And so there's always time for love, and there's always time to give that to someone in need. Also, Sean Anderson, Chef Sean, he was an amazing individual in our community. He was the type of person who was a loving character, but didn't take any mess when it came to bullying or things of that nature. Always had a wise word, and always was a man of action, and just not comments. So I appreciate that. One of the other things I wanted to highlight with expected slowing of traffic and ways that we are implementing more traffic calming solutions so we can be a more walk-friendly, bike-friendly community. I think that's something as an administration we need to keep an eye on, because I can imagine that would just cause for cars to actually turn off of main roads and speed down residential areas. So I think that's something to take into consideration as we work through this process. And then also I wanted to end on a high note that the mayor and our city manager and myself will be going over to Japan to visit our sister city with the city committee, sister city committee, Kalamazoo and Numazu. So I look forward to this travel. I look forward to the work ahead. And I give all of my positive energy to all of you guys for all the work that you continue to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner. One, I did vote for the resolution at the Conference of Mayors, and appreciated how much support there was for that. I thought I had signed on the link, and I don't know why that hasn't happened. It should have happened by now. If I haven't done that, we'll make sure it does. Wanted to comment about not roundabouts, but speed bumps. There is I know we've had a number of requests, and we had a request in our earlier meeting, and I had a request on the streets the other day. It's not always as simple as it sounds. It's not typically always about plowing, but there's rules regarding sight distance and all these engineering things that I know nothing about. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, I want one and one should go there. There's a lot of requirements that our public service department has to follow. Some of it's federal, I believe, and some of it's state law. And, we have to abide by that. Unlike others in Washington that feel they can do and say anything they want to say. But that's something I'll comment on my social media at some point in time when I'm not so angry. I do want to talk just a minute about the passings that we've had in this community, and some of them related to violence. And we know that is such a challenge right now. And what I'm so fearful of is if you observe what's happening out there in all kinds of places regarding how we relate to each other. And, Commissioner Cunningham's gonna be surprised because I'm gonna use the word how we love each other. It's just seems to be a tough time. There's violence in every community. We are no more violent than so many other communities. And we even have some in this county that believe they don't have violence in their communities, such as our city friends in the South, in Portage. And yes, I said it. We need to be working together. We need to be loving each other. We need to be thinking about how we make our communities better. And think about what the manager just said regarding the preparations that our chief and others are making regarding the weather. When it gets hot, you get more emotions, you get more strife, you get more tensions. And so I'm fearful of what may happen this weekend. I'm fearful for folks in our neighborhoods. I'm fearful for our officers. As a paramedic, I'm fearful for them. We just got to find a way, my goodness, find a way to just understand that we are in this together, and violence is not the solution. Is not the solution to trying to survive and build a quality of life. It's just not. Just not. With that, Commissioners, we have a request to go into closed session to discuss labor negotiations. We will not be coming out of this to take action, so once I adjourn us here, we will be adjourned for the evening. Is there a motion to go into close?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. We are adjourned.